Welcome back to Betting People with Terry Norman. We are going into part two. We talked in part one about the sporting life, and so we had some great memories there, but unfortunately the paper did end at one point. Take us through what it was like to be there when it went.
Well, anyone that worked with me will know exactly what happened to me. What they did, the sporting life actually went in '98, but a lot of the staff were kept on with the Racing Post for a year and then made redundant after that. So what they kind of did with a lot of people was those that got made redundant in '98 got obviously a payoff. Those that didn't stayed a year, but eventually they didn't keep much staff on. I would say my whole career, before and since, even including the football disappointment, sitting at your desk when someone's coming round with redundancy letters probably is the worst feeling in the world. And that's exactly what happened. We were sitting there. Tom Clark was, I'm sure he was in charge of the editor. I think he probably was. I can't remember. It's a long time ago now. And it was a shock for me. I've got to be honest. I was sitting there and then suddenly the secretary came up and said, "I'm really sorry, Terry." And I got given a letter. And that was it. That was the only indication that came. Now, you can imagine I was 29, 30, and you kind of think, this is going to take me by surprise, and it did. And for a couple of months, I didn't know what to do. And in the end, really enough, I went to work as a chef. I mean, I'd already knew how to cook anyway, so I went and worked in a restaurant in London. Started off as a commis chef, commis chef as most people do. Spent 2 years there, and literally just kept on working. The saving grace. Now, this is when I said to you in part one how stuff gets interwoven. By this stage, Jason Weaver had retired. So I'd left the paper. I was working as a chef. Didn't really know how I was going to get back into racing. Then suddenly, out of the blue, I got a phone call from Gary Stevens. And it's like, wow. And we started chatting, and then he told me that he'd been in contact with Sir Michael Stout. He was coming over to ride for Sir Michael Stout, and I had been recommended to him to be his agent. Now, bearing in mind, I'd finished being an agent in '97. I'd been working as a chef, was still working as a chef at the time when he phoned me. He goes, "Do you think you can come out to America?" Yeah, I think I probably could. What he hadn't told me at this time is who had recommended me. So when I went out there, I got met at the airport, and it transpired that when Jason was riding, his girlfriend at the time was a lady called Nikki. Nikki and Jason had split up. Amazingly, Nikki had gone to America and got married to Gary Stevens. So wow. The connection came via there. So Gary came over, and it's fair to say, suddenly having been in total despair, not having much money left after what happened with the life, because they didn't give you much of a payoff. The 6 months that Gary was here were just unbelievable. I mean, he was in the prime of his career at the time. I mean, he had problems with his knees. He was already in the Hall of Fame in America. In the 6 month period, he literally went and wowed everyone. I mean, Michael Stout was always going to use him. John Gosden had obviously used him when his dad was training in America, and he was training as well. And this is where you get the connection with ultra professionals. First day that Gary came over, we went and met Sir Michael, Coral, sat down there, and Michael looked at me and he went, "Whatever preconceived ideas you had of how you were going to treat Gary as a jockey, forget them." He said, "We've got to look after him. I don't want him riding A, B, C, or D at certain meetings. We're going to concentrate on the good horses, because if you do the good horses, you'll get your reward, you'll keep me happy, and everything will swing fine." John Gosden had exactly the same conversation with. Don't get him to ride in 0 to 60s. Don't be getting him to ride in selling races. He is a top-class jockey. He's there for the big races. And weirdly enough, when Jason was riding, just going back to Jason, he wanted to be champion jockey. The year that before he finished, we went from January to December with the sole aim of winning. The difference was, at the time, Frankie was hungry as a lion, and we had a ding-dong battle with Frankie from probably March onwards, all the way through to December. That was the year that Jason rode 200 winners. Never forget it. We got to the middle of December and it was obvious that he wasn't going to beat Frankie. Frankie was like 26 in front. He'd give up. And I said to Jason at the time, what do you want to do? He went, just put me on anything at all. We want to get to 200 winners. And we managed to achieve it on a horse called Magna Carta for Sir Michael Stout, weirdly enough, on the 31st of December that year. Graham Greene was working for the Racing Post at the time. And he said to me, why are you here at Wolverhampton in 2 foot of snow virtually, on -2 degrees on the last day of the year? And I said, because this at the time was the most important thing to do. The different perspective with Jason, he would ride anything, didn't care. He just wanted to ride winners. Suddenly my whole resume of being an agent had completely changed. And from that day to this, in terms of being a jockey's agent, or was being a jockey, through to being a race planner, that is the mantra that I took. And it was purely because of John Gosden, Michael Stout, and Gary's attitude to riding. Good horses, not bad. Bad horses either get you suspended, get you injured. And from that day forth, that's what we did. And he had a golden summer. I mean, my joy of when Gary came over, he won on his very first ride at Sandown for Ben Hanbury. He won on his very last ride at Sandown for Peter Chapelaine. And in between, he won the Acomb Stakes. And then he had Royal Anthem, who won the Juddmonte. And it was just a sensational. Thoroughbred Corps kind of enticed him to go back. I know he had problems with his knees anyway, but Thoroughbred Corps offered him so much money to go back and ride in America. Richard Mulhall rang him up and said, look, name your price. And Gary kind of went, well, we'll go for a stupid figure. And they paid it. So that golden summer, I mean, he finished third in the Derby on Beetle behind Oath. Funny enough, owned by the Thoroughbred Corp. But if you get a chance to go, not you personally, but anyone watching this, go back and watch. He rode a horse called Zarat Dubai in the NASA Stakes for Godolphin. It is the most amazing ride you will see. You tell me another jockey in a Group 1 race at Goodwood, he got to the top of the hill and he slowed it down so much. I think he did like 13 seconds between one furlong at the nut. He stacked them all up and then he kicked again. And the go-away present that he gave me, after he won the Acomb Stakes, he said, look, I'm going to go at the end of August. He said, I'll give you a parting gift. He said, get whatever price you can about King's Best within the Guinness. He told me that after the Acomb, he actually told me it would win the Guinness. Can I just relay a story that is often told about the relationship with Gary?
Yes, of course.
Isn't true. Jim McGrath, the guy that used to work for Timeform, loves to repeat a story about a conversation that I had with Gary. And it's wrong. So, Jim, if you're watching this, I'm going to finally correct it.
Okay.
I only had one crossword with Gary in all the time that we were here. He rode a horse, there was a horse of Ian Williams's that had run on the Tuesday at York. Now, I can't remember its name, so forgive me for that. And it was due to run on the Saturday at Newmarket. And I put Gary on it. Now, this is when he was having problems with it. He rang me up on the Friday and he said to me, why am I riding that horse for Ian Williams? I said, because I think it'll win. He goes, but it ran on Tuesday and it ran terrible. He said, I don't need the practice. And I said, trust me, I wouldn't put you on it. I remember the first conversation that we had. You don't want to ride horses unless they got a chance. He went, are you telling me you think this can win? I went, I do. And he went, tell me why. Just tell me why you want me to ride it and I'll ride it. So I said, well, it was badly drawn. The ground changed during the afternoon. It's going to be a lot quicker and you're better drawn. He went, fine. The horse won at 16-1. When he went on the morning line the following week, he was telling this story to Jim McGrath. But Jim McGrath relays the story that Gary had run me and said, I don't need the practice. Well, he kind of did, but what he said it was because he didn't want to ride it because he didn't think it could win. But he rang me the next day, Gary, and he said, Terry, he said, that's why you're an agent and I'm a jockey, and he never queried anything again. That's the beauty of a top-class jockey. As long as you can explain to them why you do something, then they will listen. And it won, and he never said a word. Weirdly enough, in terms of the jockeys that I work with, I probably dealt with two of the best jockeys in the world, and I don't think anyone would dispute that. I worked with Gary Stevens and I worked with Kieran Fallon. And they are, of all the jockeys that I worked with, and I've worked with some brilliant ones, I worked with some tricky ones, and I've worked with some dishonest ones, which I can't dispute because it's in the record, the jockeys that I did. But the two that gave me the least amount of hassle in terms of not interfering, not telling me what they wanted to ride, were Kieran and Gary. Gary had one query. Kieran, I did. He approached me 4 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago now, with the mantra of he had just come back from being banned. He'd been back 2 seasons. To be fair, the guy that did him before me did a bloody good job. I mean, Gareth Owen did him. For whatever reason, Kieran wanted to change, and he goes to me, can we try and win the Jockeys Championship? And I said, it'll be tough because you had Sylvester flying, Paul Hannigan was at the time wanting to be champion jockey, Richard Hughes was on the cusp of becoming champion jockey. So you had 3 hungry jockeys against you. And again, it didn't end great with Kieran because it kind of got a bit weird. But at that time, when we did what we did, Kieran came back, he won the German Oaks and Dancing Rain. He'll probably realise now he probably should have rode her in the Oaks in preference to Aidan's, who finished 3rd, because Johnny Murtaugh rode her and she won the Oaks. Johnny couldn't ride her in Germany, but Johnny rode her again when she ran at Ascot. He nearly became champion jockey. It was only because in the end, every person was chasing the same rides at Wolverhampton. You had Kieran, Paul and Sylvester. We were getting a lot of rides from David Evans, and we were flying. And then suddenly, I don't know what happened, David Evans then suddenly decided he didn't want to use them anymore. And then we kind of run out of petrol. But Kieran still won more prize money that year than he had done for his previous 5. He rode 152 winners. And then weirdly, I don't know why, you'd have to ask Kieran because I haven't actually spoke to him since. In March, he decided to go to another agent after having his best season. But that's what jockeys do, unfortunately. But in terms of working with him, he was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I used to ring him up and say to him, what do you want to ride in this race at Leicester? And he'll go, well, what do you think I should ride? Well, this one. Why? Okay, well, that's what we'll do. Never queried it. So it's a funny job because the way the life went is that when I was doing Gary and Gary then decided that he was going to go back, it's like most things. When you're successful, people want to use you. Mid-season, for no apparent reason again, I knew Gary was leaving in August. I got a call from Kevin Darley. Kevin Darley suddenly thought, because I had been doing rides for Gary, who was riding for Sir Michael Stack, Kevin was getting the odd ride for Sir Michael. So he said to me, would you be interested? So having been in despair before getting Gary, then being happy because I'd earned more money in 6 months than I probably earned in the previous 3 years, suddenly I was happy again because I got Kevin Darley. Now, the one thing that I never had on my CV up until then, and you kind of know with jockeys, they want to win the Derby. With agents, don't care what anyone tells you, they want to look after a champion jockey. Jason finished 2nd to Frankie. Kevin had always been 3rd or 4th. He was having great battles with Kieran. Kieran had won the championship, I think 3 years before that. I said to Kevin, look, we'll give it a go. This is where the Mark Johnson story comes into play again. So towards the end of that season, Kevin picked up a few rides and blah, blah, blah. He started picking up rides for John Gosden as well because of the connection I had with Gary and Sir Michael Stout. So we went into the next year and then we suddenly decided we were going to give the season a bash to try and be champion jockey. Kieran was in front again, like he was. And then he had that terrible fall at Ascot when he damaged his shoulder. He didn't know whether he was going to come back. Suddenly, Kevin, who was 2nd, oh, now we got a chance. Went down the same route as Jason. We went here, there, and everywhere. Kevin was flying there. Suddenly, Jimmy Fortune, who was riding most of John Gosden's, got banned. Kevin got on Observatory in the Lennox Stakes, won the Lennox Stakes, and then the owner decided to stay with him. And then one of the greatest races and probably one of the most greatest tactical rides of all time was when he went to Ascot and beat Giant's Causeway by coming up the middle of the course. Kevin then started getting rides for Mark Johnson. He got on the traction in the Queen Mary because of his connection with Observatory and John Gosden. The end of the season, he became champion jockey. He won the Northumberland Plate on Far Cry. He had his first ever ride in the Northumberland Plate, in the Melbourne Cup. The next season, he rode Shamadale when he won the Dewhurst. And then, more importantly, Attraction gave him his first classic when she won the Guineas. And then Shamadale when he won the Dewhurst. And then he finished it off by winning on Boll and Eric when he won the St. Leger. So that connection from Gary to Kevin got exactly what I wanted. The next year, Kieran came back and became champion jockey again. But for one season, Kevin just dominated. And from that, I then got Richard Quinn, because Richard Quinn finished second to Kevin. So he asked me to do it. And then so the cycle carried on.
Those are amazing stories about working with those jockeys. But I just want to go back to how did you become, first of all, a jockey's agent? And for somebody who wouldn't know, what are the ins and outs, basically, of the job? How do you get the good rides or the good horses?
Well, but this is the key thing, you see. It doesn't matter how good you are as an agent. It's basically around the jockeys that you've got. If you haven't got a good jockey, I won't name the trainer because it wouldn't be fair. But when I had Kieran, this trainer in particular, when I used to ring him, any time of the day, he'd answer the phone. When I didn't have Kieran and had a jockey that wasn't as good, did he not answer the phone? Well, I'll tell you who it was. It was David Evans. This is the conversation when I used to do with Kevin, with Kieran. David, it's Terry Norman, blah, blah, blah. Kieran, yeah, that's fine. I then did other jockeys, which I won't mention they were. Hello, David, it's Terry Norman. Just put the phone down on me, because I didn't have a jockey that he wanted. And a lot of trainers are like that. If you haven't got someone that you need to work with, they don't really care. They're not loyal. I mean, the best trainer in terms of working with was Luca Kamani, because I worked with Luca, with obviously Jason. And when I was doing Kieran, he was stable jockey at the time. And Luca would always say to me, ring me. The entries used to come out, probably still do, even though it's slightly changed now, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So Luca would say to me, ring me up at 12:30. We'll go through, if it was a Monday, we'll go through the Saturday entries. I'll tell you if I've got runners at Haydock, Newmarket, or somewhere like that. You tell me where you want to go, and we'll work from that. He was different class. And once you had that platform, you were fine. Now, some jockeys' agents are happy to do 4, 5, 6 jockeys. Dave Roberts does, God knows how many, 40. I don't know how. He obviously works that. I've always wanted to work with a small select band of jockeys, and I've been very lucky. I've always had good jockeys. It's hard to get them to start with, but after Kieran, I decided that I didn't want to be an agent anymore, because it just wrecked my head, because I couldn't understand it. And when you do a jockey's agent, I admire anyone that does the job, because anyone that tells you it's easy, it's not. Because it's not so much when you're trying to get rides. Everyone knows when they see a race what horse they want to ride. 95% of agents have got no chance of getting on that horse. So already in your mind, you are going to put your jockey onto a horse that you don't think can win. Now that goes completely against the grain. We'll come on to my betting angles for the same reason, because I have been conditioned in every job that I've done to try and get on the best horse. I don't worry about what price it is. I mean, can you imagine if I had Kieran and said, look, Kieran, you can ride the favourite in the Derby. It's definitely the right favourite. I think it can win, but I'm going to put you on something that's 10-1 because it's the best price. You just wouldn't do that. And that is how I've always done the principle. So when you haven't got a top class jockey, it's hard work, because you are ringing up to ride 10, 12, 14-1 shots. So in other words, if you've got someone that likes backing short price favourites with less variables, you are then measuring that against someone that is quite happy to back 12 or 14-1 shots, have 10, 12, 16, 20 losers on the bounce, because eventually they'll get one that will win, and that'll counteract if you back 5 winners at short prices. That is what it's like when you've got a jockey that isn't of the top level. It is difficult and it is hard work. And ultimately, you only get paid a percentage of rides. So if you've got a jockey, like we'll come on to Oisin would probably have 30, 40 rides a week. I would imagine there's a lot of agents that have got jockeys that probably get 4 or 5. So you're earning 40 quid for their rides. If they don't ride any winners, you don't get any more money. So who would work a full week for 40, 50 quid? And some agents are. It's hard work. I take my hat off to people. I mean, Michael Haggis did James Doyle and William Buick for a long while. And then he decided last year that he didn't want to carry on doing them. And everyone went, he must be mad. He must be earning fortunes. But it's 7 days a week. You get trainers ring you at any time of the day when it suits them. You can't ring them at 8 o'clock at night. But I've had trainers in the past that ring me at 10 o'clock at night. Gerard Butler used to ring me at 3 o'clock in the morning because he was feeding his horse. And then one day, I mean, he doesn't do irony, Gerard. Anyone that knows Gerard knows he doesn't do irony. He rang me one day at 5:15 in the morning. I was asleep. I woke up and I said, "Hi, Gerard." He said, "Oh, no." He says, "Did I wake you up?" I said, "No, I've just retiled the kitchen." He goes, "Oh, why are you retiling the kitchen for at 5:15 in the morning?" Well, obviously I wasn't. I was asleep. Doesn't get irony. But the point being is, he would ring me at 5:15 and not thinking anything of it. And you are there 7 days a week, literally 12 hours a day, if you want to be a success. And it is hard work. I wouldn't do it now. I really couldn't do it now.
Well, that's quite a note on which to end part 2 of Billing People. Thank you so much for all those revelations and memories, Terry Norman.